Hi everyone, another wood art project. Let's get to it. Okay, so we're going to get started on the deer. You can see I have the pattern, which is available on our Etsy store as always. The link's in the description. And I like to do two. I like to print two. I have my legend and then I cut the other one up and glue it down on the wood. You can see I've got just little pieces wherever I could fit it. I'm just using some scrap wood. And now we'll cut it out on the scroll saw. So as we get into this one, I'm going to show you how to use stain to build dimension and interest in the piece, as well as a kind of a deep dive into using paint to create the shadows, which will further enhance the dimension. And I'm also going to delve into some highlights using a really great product, gold gilding wax. So stay tuned to the end so you can see all those great the tips and tricks. Okay, so here's where we are. Everything's cut out. You can see the importance of having the pattern pieces to keep everything organized. And now we are ready to sand and stain and then put it together. Okay, so here we go. This is where we are. I've done some staining here, playing around with some color. And I should let you know, after I sanded everything, I also transferred the numbers onto each one with pen on the bottom, because it is a bit tricky. I didn't want to lose anything, so I did number them all as I went. So I was playing around with some of the brown tones there, and I'm happy with this part down here. So where we are going to go next, we're going to leave those. So I think I'm going to work on this one, and I think I want this one to be semi-dark. So I'm going to pull out a bit of the golden oak, and we'll get going on the sides. Stains, it's not terribly unforgiving, but it's not the easiest to work with either. And I'm going to see what I think of that color. I think I want a little tiny bit of dark. So I'm just going to pull out a little bit of the dark walnut and just touch the surface there. And then I am just going to wipe some of that excess off. What I'm trying to avoid is everything looking very similar in tone. Okay. We've got that one in there. And I'm thinking that this middle piece is going to stay quite light. I'm going to grab a bit of golden oak for this one with a bit of the dark still in it. And I mean, there's really no big pressure here. If you did something and you really didn't like it, you could always cut a fresh little piece for it and start again. Now I'm going to grab a bit of the weathered oak. Just want to see the contrast with the gray, how that looks. All of this should be just really fun and an expression of your creativity. Really, I wouldn't get too worked up about any of it. My gloves are too big. Okay, I'm liking that. We need this piece to be a little on the dark side. I'm going to grab some of the golden oak and a bit of that dark walnut in there. You could also just do this one color if that's more what you liked. And I will play around with the shadows and the highlights when we're done. And I will show you that. There, I think this is coming together. It's a bit tricky because you want to be able to see it, but you also need it all to dry. Okay, I'm quite happy with that, I think. So now on to the ears. I think I'm going to do the center pieces a little darker. So I'm going to start, I think, with a mid-tone, which is just the golden oak all over the edges. Find if you put the dark on the edges too much, it just starts to look almost black. Just going to do a base of that, and then I'm going to start with the darker stain on the inside. I'm going to use this, I'm treating it almost like I'm painting, and I'm going to work some of that dark in there. And see how that looks. Oh, see, I like that transition of dark to light quite a bit, and I'll be able to increase that even more when we go in at the end with some highlights and shadows. So we'll do the same thing on the other center point of the ear. So again, golden oak, just my mid-tone. And then we're going to grab some of the darker, and I'm using the same brush in all of them. Probably not ideal, but it's the way I generally work. I find then you end up with a really nice mix of all the colors, and then everything's almost a little unique every time. And I'm not too worried about if it's not quite dark enough, because I know I'll be going in and having a chance to richen those up. Now for the edges, I'm going to try just the golden oak and see what I think of that. With stain, you can go darker, but it's difficult to go lighter. Really, the only way you can is to sand, but you could definitely do that, or simply cut a piece out again. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, I have some natural oil. I kind of just want to give this a try. I'm pretty sure it's just nothing. Yeah, so there. Well, let's give it a go. This is the super fun part to me. All right, that's pretty good. So you can see there's not a ton of difference between the golden oak or just the plain, just because we're using such a pale wood. And if you have any questions about any of this, or if there's something you'd like me to do or show you, please let me know. We're totally open for any ideas. I really need to get gloves that fit me. Now, on the last one that I didn't play around with highlights a whole lot, so maybe we'll do that with this one. We'll give it a try. Okay, so quite pleased with all of this. So now we're getting into the head. So the concept of light and dark again, we know the eyes would be here, so I'm going to go there with the darkest, and then this part of the head would be back further. So I'm going to do this in a slightly darker tone, and then we're going to lighten up here. This will be light, that'll be dark for the nose, and then this is going to be a mid-tone. Okay. Okay, so I think I'm going to do, just because I'm using the same brush for everything, we're going to start with the lighter. I'm going to do just the oil. And I'll just wipe off any excess. All right, so that's where we're starting. So then we're going to hit these side pieces with a mid-tone. Okay, so that's going to be our mid-tone. I think I'm going to give up, just let my hands get dirty. And this side will be a mid-tone too, which is our golden oak. You could do this all random as well, I guess, if you wanted to. I just think this way we're building the dimension and sort of building out the body of the animal with the colors as well as the different pieces. Okay, I'm just going to make myself some space here. Okay, and now these are going to be the darkest because they're the eyes, and I'm going to do this. Is going to be a mix of the oak, golden oak. And you by no means have to use any of these colors. You could pick your own. You could also do it with paint like I mentioned before. And I'm going to pick up some of the dark. Just going to let that hang out for a minute. And I know we're going to end up doing some of the shadows here too. Okay. Okay, and now that leaves the eyes and the nose piece, which are going to be the dark. Now I am going to mix a tiny bit of that dark with the natural just to get it to spread. I find it really grabs in the cut sides of the wood. Okay. All right, so that's one. We're going to do the other one. And don't be afraid to mix these up, mix your own colors, play around with them. See the different combos, what they do. Layer your stains too, that's another great way. But I know some of this is new to some people, so definitely don't be afraid to try. Okay, and this is the nose piece, so again, going to be dark, trying to build the dimension. And whenever you're painting or doing anything like this, you're basically always working with 3 tones. Light tone, a mid-tone, and a dark tone. And it's to create depth. Okay, so I think we're there. Good enough at least now to let it dry. And see what we think of it all. And like I say, you can't really go lighter unless you sand. You could always go darker if need be, and you can always recut a piece if you don't like what the stain has done. And that would be totally fine too. Okay, just trying to get a sense of what we've done here, but it's kind of hard to get this all put back together when it's still wet. But anyway, there we go. Okay, so now we're going to start gluing this down. So I've just got it on here. He's still loose. I'm just trying to get a sense of where he should go. And I am just eyeballing this. All right. So I'm going to start here. So I wanted to let you know that we're going to be doing a separate video on how Chris creates the frames for these different wood art pieces. He does it using pieces of 2x4. I think each frame comes out to be less than $1. It's an awesome, awesome project. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so the deer is completely glued down. I do need to do some touch-ups on the background for some of the glue that went on it, but I'll do that at the end. So now we're going to start doing some shading to really try to bring some dimension to this. So basically you just need a liner brush and then a slightly larger brush. I'm really not too fussy with what I use, but I've been doing this a long time. So basically you want a skinnier brush and then something a little softer to be able to feather out the edges. And I'm just using black paint. Use whatever black paint you have. This happens to be just Fusion, but it doesn't have to be that. Any paint will do. And we'll get started. So the point of doing the shadows is to try to bring dimension. So shadows push things back and light brings things forward. So I'm going to darken up the eyes and the nose, but that's not a shadow. That's just deepening the color. Then I'll do some shadowing here and here to try to reset these pieces to bring the eyes forward and the nose forward. I'll do some here in the ear to really deepen that up to show that that's inside. So let's just get started. So basically, I just have some water over here and a paper towel. So I'm going to just start with a bit of black. And I want it thin, almost ink consistency. And I'm gonna have another paper towel over on the side just in case. So I'll start with the ears. So we want to deepen this up in here because that would be your furthest point, because it's the inset of the ear. And then we're just going to slowly start to build up the depth along that seam to show that that is the inside. And use your finger, soften at the edges. And it's building many different layers just to get that depth. So I'll just let that one dry. I'll come back to it and I'll do a similar thing on this side. So the paint is quite watery. You want it almost like an ink, just so you don't end up with a blob. That's a little too watery. So I'll just add a bit more paint to it. This just kind of comes with experience. You want it to put some pigment down, but not be opaque necessarily. And just use the paper towel to pick up if you get a puddle. It's paint, it's pretty forgiving. And we'll just start emphasizing these seams. And this will give beautiful depth to this ear. So come back over to this one now. Just really building in that corner because that's going to be your furthest. And when you do shadows, you generally work in a triangular pattern, or highlights for that matter. And you want to soften the edges, and it might take many layers, and that's okay. And it's also a good idea to do a bit, soften out your edges, let it dry, and then step away from it and see, is this what I want? So I'm gonna leave that for now to let that dry, but I also know I want a shadow here where the antlers meet the head, because that would be a natural shadow point. Just having a bit of a hard time being able to do this while you guys can still see it. So here I'm just gonna do some lines that kind of mimic the grain almost in the wood. Just to really try to start building that up. One with my finger, soften it out a bit. Hope you guys can see that. And you can see this is black paint I'm using, but it is not solid because I've got it watered down, because we don't want it to look like a big black paint blob. We just want the depth. I'm going to do that on the seams here too, just to try to really emphasize that this is pieces. My stain, some of my stains here on the antlers kind of all ended up looking similar. That happens. So just try to differentiate it a bit with some paint. And this is how you're going to start to really build a nice dimension. And really just take your piece. The piece was fine as is. If you don't want to do this part, you definitely don't have to. I just feel this brings the piece to the next level. And I also love to paint. So any excuse to paint. So I'm just trying to get some darkness to really make these edges pop. All right, maybe we'll go back to the ear a little bit. Gonna go with a little more solid paint just for this corner to really start to build that depth. And just pat out the edge. And you'll notice as I get darker and darker and darker, the area I'm covering is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's gonna really build that depth in. Now I'm gonna just try to darken up these eyes a little bit. I'm gonna use some of the watered down black paint. And here I'm basically just trying to give it a slightly darker. The stain looked darker to me when I stained it than it turned out. So just trying to give it a bit of extra darkness. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it so much. And please feel free to leave any comments or questions that you do have. And please hit that like button. It helps so much. Okay, now this area here would also be darker because the head would be shadowing that. And I think I'm going to pull in my other brush. Just get it a bit wet. My other brush, you'll see, it makes it easier to start to soften those edges where my finger's not going to fit. So just put some paint down and come in with this. Soften the edges. Be mindful that the lighter wood obviously is going to show the black paint much stronger. So you're going to want to soften that out maybe a bit more. And again, this would come down in a bit of a triangle to mimic the shape of the face. Okay, so to finish him off, I want to do a few highlights, but to do a white paint would be too chalky. It's too stark compared to all the warmth of the wood. So I'm going to do something special for this little guy. I'm going to use gold gilding wax. So I'm not sure if many of you have used this before or not, but it's something I use quite often. And it's just basically a wax with a gold powder in it, and it works beautifully to do highlights. I use it a lot. I did a lot of furniture painting, and I used to use it quite a bit there. So I find one of the best ways to use it with your fingers. So you just need cleanish fingers, and you're just going to get a little bit on your finger, and then you're going to just touch the edges where you want it highlighted. I'm going to probably have to lift this a little bit. So I know I'm going to want the edges here. It's very subtle. I hope you guys can see it on the video. Hopefully it shows. And this is just going to add a little sparkle and a little highlight there. I hope you can see it. So when you're going into highlight, you're going to highlight all the areas that would be forward. So the edges of the antlers and the ears. My wax is quite cold. I just need to work it a little bit. And it's just going to give it a little sparkle. I don't even know if it's something someone would look at it and say, oh, there's gold on that. I think it's more just it is going to make it pop. And there, I hope that shows up. It really just adds that little finishing touch. And now I can go a little crazy with this sometimes. So sometimes less is more and you just have to stop yourself. I can put a link to this in the description below if it's something you want to try. It's relatively inexpensive and it is beautiful. All right, there we go. We can't thank you enough for watching. We appreciate it so, so much. And if this is the sort of thing you're looking for, let us know. If you want less detail, more detail, we'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks so much. Have a great day.